true believers. Today I'm going to be reviewing a movie I saw about a month ago. It's kind of old news now, but the new Amazing Spider-Man movie, The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Not to be confused with the original trilogy's second installment. Originally when I saw this movie, and I was going to give it just this really glowing review, just fantastic, over the top, and I still really like the movie, but after reading some other reviews and kind of just taking in some other points of view, I do realize where it fell short and why some people might be disappointed with it. But if you like the first Amazing Spider-Man as much as I did, and I loved the first Amazing Spider-Man, that's another review for another day, this second movie, I feel like it does a good job of picking up where that one left off. Now, after that, it gets a little bit off the tracks, but as far as, there's already an understanding, Peter Parker, he even explains his parents a little bit more and where they've been, but, the main characters, Peter Parker, Gwen Stacy, they're all pretty well established, and then they add in Harry Osborn, who, of course, you knew was coming, because his father, who was referenced in the first one, Norman, is dying, and he does die in this one. Yes, I know, I already revealed the plot point. But anyway, getting back to the movie, I guess the first thing I want to touch on is Electro, because he's supposed to be the main villain of the movie. And he is. I mean, I will say that much. Okay, I'm not going to say he's a great villain, I'm not going to say he's a terrible villain. Originally, even with the Lizard in the first movie, I was kind of skeptical. The Lizard was never one of my favorite villains. And then they go to Electro, and I'm like, oh, great, another villain I don't really care about. Green Goblin's an okay villain, but anyway, Electro, as far as the villain, I'm still not a big fan, but they did a good job of making him a real threat. Electro, or Max Dillon, is a big Spider-Man fan. He's like this estranged Oscorp worker who nobody talks to, and he gets stuck working late overnight. Somehow there's a pot full of freaking, I don't know, radioactive eels. That was one of the things I did agree was kind of stupid. When I first watched the movie, I was kind of just into it. I was invested, and I didn't even think twice, like, why are a bunch of electric eels not killing him? But anyway, so he becomes Electro, this being made of electricity, which I thought was really over the top, because even the comic book Electro is not made of electricity. He just has electrical powers. But, this Electro is just this really uncontrollable force. And that is what makes him both kind of lame and kind of cool at the same time, if that makes sense. Because he had so much power, and yet in the first battle with Spider-Man, it's kind of just wasted. It's kind of like Spider-Man and him have a little standoff, and then, I don't know, things kind of get dicey there, and a bunch of electricity flies everywhere. And I mean, yeah, it's kind of cool, but it's not until the end of the movie that you really see Electro as kind of like, alright, I can take this, I can live with this. That's all I really want from my hero movies. That's what I liked about Lizard in the first one. That's what I liked about Doc Ock in the original Spider-Man movies. They're real threats. Not just, whether or not you agree with their credibility or whatever. I mean, Electro sucks the power out of the whole city, becomes this magnificent just being of electricity. Spider-Man really has to try hard to take him down. I mean, that, to me, is at least what the goal is. It's just to be a really threatening villain, not just a kind of a pushover, which I'll get to the Rhino later. Now, Harry Osborn, not a character that I'm overly familiar with. Obviously, from the first Spider-Man movies, we saw a very different portrayal. In this movie, he seems very goth. I've heard that word thrown around, kind of emo. I'm not going to go that far. Again, not knowing everything about Harry Osborn, I didn't think it was a bad portrayal. I liked that he wasn't like the pleasant, kind of well-to-do kid that Harry was in the first series of movies. I liked that he was a little more dark and disturbed, and, for good reason, because his father just died, and he found out that he has the same degenerative disease. So he gets back in touch with Peter, and they have this weird best friends montage. I saw some people hating on that, too, but I actually liked that. Because the whole time I knew, that Harry Osborn, well, see, I didn't know that originally, but Harry Osborn becomes the Green Goblin. I always thought it was Norman Osborn, but since he died, I figured it was going to be Harry. So, to me, that made it more poignant. Like, I knew they were going to reference their friendship. I didn't realize it would be quite as emotional as it was, but they start talking about Spider-Man, of course. And, of course, Harry hasn't figured out that Peter is Spider-Man, so he's saying, oh, wouldn't it be great if I could get some of this spider venom that Spider-Man had, or the spider blood. So, and again, I don't know why Harry's the only one that put two and two together and figured out that Spider-Man is the result of Oscorp testing. That I thought was kind of funny, that, everyone's like, oh, Spider-Man, he's cool. And nobody at Oscorp thought, hey, wait a minute, didn't we have these radioactive spiders that might have had something to do with it? So anyway, Harry figures out the secret behind Spider-Man. Spider-Man comes and tells him he's not going to give him his blood because it'd be too dangerous. Again, a point that another reviewer made that I agree with. Why even come? Like, why would Spider-Man even come and tease him like that? Peter should have just said, Spider-Man said no. But anyway, at the end of the first Spider-Man, Gwen Stacy's father dies and warns Peter to stay away from Gwen. Keep Gwen out of it. So, in the very beginning of the movie, he's already reminded of this, and he starts to have second thoughts about dating her, and then she breaks up with him, and it's like this big dramatic deal. And then, obviously, I'm a big Gwen Stacy fan. I was a big fan of their romance in the first movie, so I'm like, well, obviously they're not going to stay broken up, but it was still kind of frustrating that they were, like, together so quickly and then broken up so quickly. And then they get back together, obviously, and it's just kind of crazy. I like the chemistry between them. I like how they almost can't resist each other on screen, and yes, I know they're dating in real life, but I thought that was really cool the way they did that. Like, even when they're trying to be friends, they're still not really just friends. And they kind of literally can't stay away from each other. And, well, while Peter has this other stuff going on with his life, and I'm not even going to really touch on the stuff with his parents. If anyone cared about that storyline from the first movie, you'll be glad to see that it somewhat plays out in this one. For those of you who didn't care, you'll be more frustrated that they played it out as much as they did. Basically, Peter Parker finds an old calculator while he's digging through his parents' old stuff, throws it on the ground, and realizes that it has something to do with some subway station. This was kind of a part of the movie I thought was obscure. If they were going to reference the parent story at all, they should have had it be a little more significant than just, oh, look at this, it's coordinates to the subway station. Then he goes to this old abandoned subway station. He's like, crap, there's nothing here. He hits a wall, and a train comes up from the ground. And in that train, he finds something that reveals his parents' history, or at least some of it. This montage that his father made for him shortly before he left. And it's like, oh, that's all we needed. Obviously, the secret was in the subway tunnel that nobody knew was there, and if you hit the button, the video plays and you realize everything. I will admit, not every part of this movie was gold. I liked the action scenes. I liked how Spider-Man was a little more playful. Some people didn't like that. I liked it. I liked that he's wearing a fireman hat at one point, and he's kind of just in the middle of things. Like, usually you think of Spider-Man as just kind of like coming in to fight, making little quips toward villains, but he's a lot more playful in this movie, and he was playful in the first one. So as far as Spider-Man himself, that was great. Some of the Peter Parker scenes were a bit weak, particularly all the times he's trying to hide from Aunt May that he's Spider-Man. I mean, if she hasn't figured it out at this point, living with him, then that's pretty bad on her part. So, moving on in the movie. As I mentioned, Electro does evolve into becoming a big threat, but before he can do that, for some reason Harry Osborn, wants to team up with him, because Harry Osborn gets ousted from Oscorp, and another kind of shoddy plot hole where the executives somehow blame him for the accident that caused Max Dillon's, well, not really death, but whatever. So anyway, I'm going to speed this up a little bit because it's a long movie, and the funniest thing about this is, and obviously those of you who've seen the movie are going to agree with what I'm about to say, it's a really long movie, but it's really the end of the movie that sticks with me. I'm just kind of recapping this movie from the beginning as best I can, because the ending is what sticks with me, and that is why I still label this as a really good movie. So getting toward that end, Electro and Harry team up to keep things short, and Max is just so flattered that somebody needs him. I thought that was a bit overdone, too. I mean, Jamie Foxx does a good job of portraying this kind of social outcast, but it's almost too much. It's like, nobody ever talks to me. Oh my god, this guy's talking to me. Like, okay. I mean, I was unpopular, too, and I probably still am, but I don't go that nuts if somebody talks to me. Granted, I've never been Electro. But anyway. So basically, Harry and Electro have this little exchange. Electro gets him back into Oscorp so that he can get at this spider venom that's mysteriously just kind of there. Although it was teased in the beginning of the movie, because he gets to the spider venom, and shocker, he starts going nuts and finds the glider. So that kind of happens, and just like the beginning of the movie, I'm thinking, alright, well, Green Goblin's coming now, but when? And it's not until possibly the worst possible moment that he does appear. And getting to that, and I had all these scenarios in my head. I'm just going to warn you right now. The plot spoilers are coming right now. So Gwen Stacy's pretty much on her way to England, as far as we're all concerned. Yeah, she goes to England or something. She's about to. And then on her way to the airport, she notices in Web, gee, who could have done that, this love message from Peter Parker, Spider-Man. So they, are about to embark on this romantic adventure together. He's going to move to England. Everything's happy. And, of course, we know that's not going to last. So the electricity goes out in the whole city. And I'm just thinking in my head, before any of this stuff even happens with Electro, I'm like, ah, crap, they've set this up perfectly. They're about to have this great exit together. It's just this great couple. And anyone who knows the comics knows that Gwen Stacy dies. So I'm just thinking in my head, I'm like, crap. Like, this is set up too perfectly. Just as they're about to do something great, something terrible happens. So I'm expecting Electro to kill her, to be honest. I'm expecting something. Some kind of debris, some kind of explosion during the fight. And I mean, she's right in the thick of it, too, which makes it even worse. She ends up following Spider-Man despite his wishes, and she ends up being the one who shuts off the main power, or turns it on, I can't remember. She does something with a switch, and overloads Electro. Electro explodes. I'm a big Gwen Stacy fan, in case you can't tell. And it's not just the character, because I never really read that much of the comics. I mean, I read some of them, but you can't get the same sense from the comics, in my opinion, that I got from the first movie. Just seeing Peter and Gwen meet each other and get more familiar with each other. To me, that was just so organic. And the way it was broken up and put back together so many times in this movie almost made it less organic. But worse than that, of course, is the ending. Because Electro dies, and right on cue, Green Goblin glider flies in. And I know, I was actually kind of a fan of that part. I'm like, oh, cool, this is going to be cool. Spider-Man's going to kick his ass. And Harry Osborn appears. I found it interesting that in this one he doesn't have a mask on or anything. You can clearly tell it's Harry. His face has been altered a lot. But Harry comes as Green Goblin, pretty much just chastises Peter for not giving him the spider blood. Figures out that it's Peter because, hey, he's with Gwen. And that's when things turn ugly. And this is what I mean. The next 5 or 10 minutes, whatever it takes, this is what I remember about this movie more than the first 2 hours. Is Goblin kidnapping Gwen Stacy, bringing her to the top of this clock tower. Oh, and one other thing. This was cliche, and I thought so at the time of the movie. Put her down. I'm like, you could say anything except put her down, because obviously when you tell the villain to put her down, they're going to put her down. So he drops her through this clock tower. She falls, not looking good. Spider-Man catches her, and, again, I'm thinking, well, that's not the end of it. Goblin's not going to take that sitting down. This bomb blows up near them. They end up tumbling some more. She's still, she's not safe, but she's in a precarious situation. And, again, I knew she was going to die. It really wasn't a shock if you read the comics or even knew about her, but the way they did it was both masterful and pretty tragic, because as Peter Parker's fighting the Green Goblin, as they're going at it, all this stuff and debris flying, Stacy's hanging by literally a thread, a piece of web, between a couple gears, and you see the clock tower ticking around, just getting ready to snap as soon as the gears intersect. And then I see Spider-Man beat Goblin. Like, he somehow just knocks him unconscious, and I'm like, alright, he still has time to save her. He's got, plenty of time to save her. Goblin's not even a factor right now, even as, he's trying to stomp on Spider-Man's hand. He takes care of Goblin, so I'm like, alright, he's got to save Gwen now. He's got to save her now. And she's fallen, and it's still, it's believable enough of a fall that it would kill her, but then it's not until he shoots that final web toward her, and I think we know what I'm talking about. And, he looks like he's about to catch her, and she just hits the ground and snaps her neck on the piece of webbing. And I'm like, damn. The whole crowd went silent. I kind of knew she was dead. In some sick way, I really hoped she wasn't dead. I was like, please don't let her be dead. Please don't let her be dead. Because for some reason in my head I was rationalizing it. I was like, oh, I think in the trailer I saw her in another part of the movie, so she couldn't possibly be dead now. And all this other crap. And then it cuts to the scene of him at the cemetery. And even then, I'm thinking, maybe Gwen Stacy's going to come up behind him and say, I can't believe my father's been dead a year. But no, she's dead. It was that quick. It was like, the movie was brilliant in the way it did that. That scene disturbed me. That scene was very suspenseful. And I will say this right now, that this is the first time in a long time that I've cried during a movie. In fact, I don't think I've ever cried during a movie. I've cried during some TV shows. But I didn't cry a lot, but I teared up. I really did. As much as I saw it coming, I didn't see it coming the way it happened. And, that doesn't make me want to just bash Goblin's head in. I don't know what would. But, like I meant, overall, and the movie was pretty fantastic. The ending was kind of weak, in my opinion. After she dies, he kind of goes off on his own for a while, and then remembers why he loved her in the first place, and goes back out to be Spider-Man and saves a little kid from getting killed by the Rhino. That's literally how it ends. So, Rhino, not a big fan of, so I don't really care that he was only in 30 seconds of it, but, again, if I had to put a score on this, like a score out of 10, because that seems to be the popular thing to do in movie reviews, I'd probably give it a solid 8. It wasn't an A movie, but it wasn't a terrible movie. It had some plot points that kind of dragged it down, such as Electro's kind of just human nature being so wimpy, but then being so cool at the same time. I didn't really... That kind of... I know I'm supposed to suspend my disbelief, but that kind of was kind of ridiculous. He went from being Spider-Man's #1 fan to his #1 enemy that quickly, and then he, kind of just... His big plan was just to electrify everything. So Electro, kind of weak, but also kind of what I was expecting. It was a decent final battle against him. Goblin was done actually very well. He was just more of an evil son of a bitch than the first Goblin, as far as I'm concerned. And Rhino, kind of just useless filler. So, I mean, that's my take on the movie. The villains, Harry's character was done pretty well. I didn't mind them being friends as kind of a subplot because it made the ending just that much more devastating that one of his best friends ends up killing his girlfriend. I thought that was, like, really ridiculous. But, obviously Gwen Stacy, also great job by Emma Stone, and really going to miss her in the next one. So, that's my review on The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I would highly recommend seeing it. I mean, obviously, I would recommend seeing it more if you've seen the first one. If you haven't seen the first one, I would see the first one because that's kind of what made the second one for me. If I hadn't seen the first one, I'd be kind of like, might not be as attached to the characters, but seeing them evolve from the first one is what made this one so cool to me. Even with the tragic ending for Gwen Stacy, which still sticks in my mind more than the 2 hours before it. So, that's my review. Agree, disagree, don't know, don't care. Gonna get this on DVD when it comes out, see if there's any bonus scenes, see about the Mary Jane footage they didn't use or whatever. And that's about all I got. Till next time.